what all monotheists are told to do, and admire the man who said, yes, I'll gut my kid to show my love of God, I'd say, no, fuck you. Who can create us sick, as apparently we are, and then order us on pain of eternal torture to be well again. You're a child made in the image of God. Oh no, you're not. You're a faggot. And you can't join your church and you can't go to heaven. This is disgraceful. It's inhuman.
So does your holy book that your entire belief system is founded on, does it say that it's okay for you to beat your wife? And you still follow this belief system? Why? See, that's where I have problems. I mean, you can take away all the other things about Islam, the honor killings, the double standards with women always getting the short end of the stick, half the rights for women, the fact that your book commands death to other human beings. I mean, to me, right there, that would be a deal breaker. I'm sorry, the book says I should kill somebody? I'm sorry, but I have a better sense of morality than your book does. But putting all that aside, putting aside that little girls are being forced to marry perverted old men, putting that aside, putting aside child genital mutilation, putting that aside too, and the fact that not just terrorists, but pretty much it seems to be a pretty common occurrence where Muslims get very, very, very upset if anybody questions or criticizes their beliefs. That, putting that aside, okay, putting it all aside, let's just look at this one thing. The book says it's okay to beat another human being. Quran, verse 4:34. Men are the maintainers. Kind of reminds me of slave master, that word, maintainers, you know, or like the guy out with the sheep and he's got his stick and he's got his dogs to herd them. That's what the word maintainers brings to mind when I see that word. Maintainers, the keepers, the slave masters. Men are the maintainers of women, because Allah has made some of them to excel others, and because they spend out of their property. The good women are therefore obedient. Yeah. Guarding the unseen as Allah has guarded. And as to those on whose part you fear desertion, admonish them, and leave them alone in the sleeping places, and beat them. Then, if they obey you, do not seek a way against them. Surely Allah is high, great. Quran, verse 4:34. Isn't that special? Explanation. Men are managers in a household, not in general sense. These are gradual steps in the case of a wife who is not faithful to her husband. These rules were allowed to save a failing marriage, not as a means to control one's wife on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so it's okay to control her sometimes? Not every day, but sometimes it's okay to control another human being, really? It's okay for a man to control his wife like she's a dog or a fractious colt? Put her in a harness, tie her to a post, whip her, Because, you know, sometimes you gotta control her. Take away all the other bullshit that Islam puts out in the world, all the poison that Islam spreads into societies. Take away all of it, except this one thing. This fucking book says it's okay to beat another human being. And it's, again, a glaring double standard. Does it say that the woman can, on occasion, control her husband? No. No, never. Not when it's a man-made patriarchal belief system. Hell no. What man who's putting together and making up a belief system, a cult as it were, what man would create one that says that it's okay for a woman to beat a man and it's okay for a woman to maintain men? Hell no. There's no man on earth who would make up a religion like that. Proving, ultimately, that this is a man-contrived invention to control women. It's disgusting. I'm sorry. Half the human race, this cult is trying to claim that half the human race should be maintained by the other half. What does that mean exactly? Well, it means that women, according to what I got from watching the stoning of Soraya M., are considered guilty in a court of law until they prove themselves innocent. Whereas a man is assumed innocent until it is proven he is guilty. Interesting double standard, and for Soraya M., it costs her her life. If the story is even remotely true to the film, she didn't even get to stand inside of a courtroom. She didn't even get to say her side of the story or defend herself. She was just, well, she's guilty. The end. Let's kill her. Yeah, women don't get to testify in many kind of cases, but the ones that they can testify in, their testimony is only worth half as much as a man's because she's only worth half as much. She only gets to inherit half as much. The explanation for that is, well, because it's the man that has to spend all the money to maintain his wife. Well, interesting. That kind of makes her forever poor, doesn't it? She can't get ahead. The man will let her work, but does she get to have full control of her money? And what kind of jobs do women get in Islamic countries? Do they get the kind of jobs that they can be independent and not have to depend on a man maintaining them? A woman who's living independently without a man maintaining her doesn't have a man spending his money to maintain her, so I would think she should get her full inheritance. Shouldn't she? Does she? I highly doubt it. I want to know how any man who has any who makes the claim that he believes in women's rights, in women being equal, how any man could be a Muslim who thinks that a woman should be equal and should have equal rights. How can anybody in general be a Muslim who thinks that women should be equal human beings and have equal rights? This cult contradicts human equality. It contradicts the very idea of women being equal human beings to men. Yes, because Allah has made some of them to excel others. Really? So a man excels a woman in every single way? There's nothing she's better at than he is? Are we just looking at strength then? Or are we just assuming that the man is smarter because the man gets to go to school and be educated and women are restricted if they're lucky to get educated at all? Yeah, it's an artificial environment that makes women lesser. Or men excel. The only thing men excel at, really, is physical strength. And I'm sorry, but in the modern world where we have cars and gizmos that do a lot of the work for us, physical strength isn't quite what it used to be. I mean, it's nice to have it. It's definitely nice if you can open the top of a jar without having to ask somebody else to help you. But does that really make you inferior as a human being because you can't open a jar? What if you're a musical genius? Does that make you as a woman excel to a man who isn't a musical genius? So why is it that men are the maintainers of women? It's like, let's keep society in the Stone Age. Maybe once upon a time, women were dependent on men. I suspect once upon a time, both genders were completely dependent on each other. I don't really think there was a time when one was the maintainer of the other. This is a man-made thing. What a great thing for men, though. You know, if I was a man, I totally would understand why other men would want to be a Muslim and believe in Islam. You know, I can't think of another cult on the planet where men are, you know, the masters of everything, superior to everything. You notice when there's protests, when you have a Muslim get together and there's a huge protest, a collection of people protesting and whatever in a group, it's always the men, isn't it? Why is that exactly? Do women not have the right to believe in something strongly? Do women not have the right to rail against something that they feel is an injustice? Are women, is it just not feminine for a woman to speak out against something that she opposes? What is she, at home knitting, doing some embroidery while her husband is out doing the man's job of causing trouble and throwing bottles at cops, or whatever they do, waving flags, saying, "Behead those who oppose Islam"? Never see a woman in those kind of crowds. Interesting. I guess they're not superior enough, right? They're not fully human enough. One reason. The others just kind of pile up and clutter up the room. One reason alone to think that Islam is a piece of shit belief system. It says that a man can beat his wife, another human being. Think about it. Most likely he's stronger and bigger than she is. Most likely. And this book says it's perfectly okay for him to beat his wife. Oh, but there's rules about it. He can't beat her in any way that there's visible marks on her body. He can't beat her above the neck. How many domestic violence cases happen because this book says to men that it's okay for them to beat their wife? Oh, well, yeah, he did go a little overboard. Yeah, she's in the hospital. Yeah, she's missing her eye. She's broken some ribs. He got a little crazy, you know, but she was really deserving it. Yeah, she had a look of defiance when he told her to go in the kitchen and do the dishes. She looked defiant when he told her. That's another thing. That's another reason that I think Islam is absolutely the shittiest belief system on the planet. Women, if the man wants you to have sex with him, you have to. Doesn't matter if you're in the mood or not, it's your duty to have sex with them. Spread your legs, girls. Submit. There's no such thing as rape in a marriage. The man pretty much owns you, and it's your job to give him what he wants any time of day, no matter what your situation. You could be on the phone talking to your long-lost sister that you haven't you haven't seen since you were 5 years old, and oh my gosh, miracle of miracles, she finally figured out where you were and contacted you, and you're in tears on the phone. Oh my gosh, that's my sister. Oh, he wants sex. Excuse me, I'll have to call you back. My husband wants sex now. She doesn't get to say no. Oh, and if she does say no, that's defiance. He can beat her. He can punish her. He can maintain her. Yeah, maintain her. There are gradual steps on how he can do it. There's a process on how he can do it. Kind of like, when you have a horse and you're trying to break it, there's a process. You get it used to the halter, you get it used to being led, you get it used to having a bit in its mouth, you get used to driving it from behind with long reins, so it gets used to turning. It's kind of like that. It's a process you go through before you throw the saddle on and you start kicking with your spurs. This cult makes women property of men. This cult makes women inferior and forever dependent upon men. There's this article here that talks about the different things about beating a wife and what the circumstances are. Yes, men are the protectors and maintainers of women. Yes, isn't that special? There's a word that implies a person who safeguards and takes care of a woman. Because, women can't possibly take care of themselves on their own. No! Because this cult makes it that way. It puts women in a little box, and it makes it that way. It's just not proper, girls, for you to want a life of your own, for you to have a career, for you to have ambitions and hopes and dreams that you want to achieve. It's just not proper for you to not want children. Pump them out as many as you can, because we want to breed Islam over the entire planet. Outbreed everybody else and make the whole world Islam. So pump out those babies. Marry little girls so you can get more babies out of every woman. Start them young. They can start having babies at 11 years old, some of them. That's more babies, more Muslims on the planet. And if they decide when they're old enough to know what the fuck what's going on, that they don't believe in Islam, well, then they could be killed, because that makes them apostates. It says right in the book that you can kill apostates. Yeah, so raise your children to believe in a belief system that will cause them to die if they somehow don't believe it and have the guts to say they don't believe it. How anybody can defend this cult and say this is a good thing, or say it's peaceful? How is it peaceful to beat somebody? How is any cult or any belief system peaceful that says it's okay to beat somebody? This goes on to say it's okay to kill people. There's a lot of things that this book says about different reasons you can kill people. But forget that. Again, we're putting all that aside. The fact that it says it's okay to beat somebody I'm sorry, it's not the religion of peace. If it says it's okay to beat someone, but it's to control her. Why any woman with any self-respect at all would go along with this and agree with this is completely beyond me. I can't even fathom it. All I can think is women have been raised up with this poison, and it's infested them. It's infected them. It's warped their perspectives. What kind of self-esteem would you have if you walked around, yeah, it's okay if my husband beats me, if I say no. I have to submit to sex whenever he asks. Utterly sickening. Beyond sickening. Women are slaves in this cult. Women are slaves. And the headscarves they wear offends. anybody who values human equality and freedom. It offends because it symbolizes slavery. I don't like seeing a woman in the United States wearing headscarves. I know it's America. They're free to wear whatever they want and believe whatever they want. Unfortunately, I cannot just not feel things. When I see it, I feel offended. I feel angry, and I feel very sad for the woman because I'm looking at a slave. If a cult came to America, wanted to immigrate to America, and that cult had right in their little whatever that it was okay to have slaves, and they had slaves, and they were bringing their lifestyle into America, which included their slaves, would I feel anger and offended and upset to see slavery happening right in front of my eyes in America? Yeah, I would. I would be angry to see somebody in chains in what's supposed to be a free country. Freedom for all. And imagine if slavery was still going on in the South. When you went to visit in the South, would you feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little angry, a little upset to see your fellow human beings being treated like property? That's how I feel when I see a woman in a headdress or a whatever, veil, hijab, whatever, burqa. I get angry because I feel like there it is right in front of me, a human being in chains, a slave to this cult, a slave to their husband, and they don't even see it. This is mental slavery. This is conditioned slavery. One reason to despise Islam, one reason to oppose Islam, one reason to say bullshit, this is not a religion of peace. Men, it's okay to beat your wives.